Hi everyone, this is Peter NG. I'm here to record a special episode 10. I've been really happy with the process of recording the podcast and catching up with all these different people that I've had a chance to talk with, and I've got so many other guests that I can't wait to share with you guys. But this felt like a little bit of a milestone, so I'm doing a little bit of a solo episode today. A little bit of a quick teaser on what we're talking about. Quite literally, a podcast changed my life. I know that sounds dramatic, but I was driving around Chicago, doing medical courier runs, drowning in debt, wondering what I was doing with my life. And something I heard on the radio pointed me in a direction I never expected. So it felt right that on episode 10 of this show, I get the chance to tell you that story. So I really appreciate everyone for listening in and sticking with me all this time. So today's episode is all about how I became a teacher. So to begin with, I started off my time in college at UCF. I really enjoyed my time there. It was an incredible school, awesome opportunity, met some great people. I was on the pre-med track. And while I was on the pre-med track, my degree was Molecular and Microbiology. Late 2012, I started to have doubt, and I started to really not be sure of myself. I had already taken courses for the MCAT. I thought that was going to be my path forward. But unfortunately, the scores were looking a little not so great, to put it lightly. I probably could have gotten into some Caribbean schools if I wanted to go that route. It was going to be incredibly expensive, hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. And so I really just started to doubt myself. I was so far into my degree that it made no sense for me to just drop everything. So I finished my degree, moved back to St. Augustine, started working jobs there. I worked at Nike for a little while, continued to work at Nike, should I say, because I worked there when I was in my undergrad. And then I took a restaurant job. That was a really fun experience. I got to learn a little bit about what it takes to work at a relatively fine dining place and learn how to open a bottle of wine and serve that properly. But I quickly was having a bit of cabin fever and feeling like I wasn't living up to my expectations. So I applied to some jobs. I got lucky that a position was available in Chicago. I flew up to Chicago. Everything seemed like a dream come true. It's a big city. Awesome interview experience. They had offered me the position, and I had these big eyes thinking, okay, here we go. And I took the position. My younger brother, Matthew, he drove with me all the way up to Chicago in a tiny little Fiat, which is the car I used to drive. And when I got there, I found a place to rent a room and just kind of live my life. And I had to buy an inflatable bed. I was very much just doing what I could in the moment. Unfortunately, that job didn't work out well for me, and it really wasn't something that I thought it was going to be based on the interview process, but it just really wasn't a good fit for me. So I had to find other work, still had to pay off, whatever bills I had while I was there, and I found a position as a medical courier. In medical courier work, you are delivering blood samples and medical samples to labs, basically. That was a pretty cool experience. Getting that chance, I was able to drive around a lot through the city of Chicago and the neighboring boroughs like Evanston and things like that, and cities, should I say. And I really got to get familiar with the city and the town, and really made me fall in love with the city, and I'm super excited to return soon. Unfortunately, a position like that really just was not paying very well. And so I kind of felt like I was in a rut. On top of that, I was starting to accrue a lot of debt. I was struggling. I was very happy that I met some great friends there and formed some incredible memories, but I truly didn't have a plan. So one night, I take a delivery job that was paying a little extra. And this job had me deliver from a Quest Diagnostics, pretty common place for me to go to a lab about 45 minutes out of the city. at 1:30 in the morning. These were notoriously late jobs, and I guess you could say a little riskier because of the time of the night. I never felt like my life was at risk or anything like that, but worth mentioning that. And in my experience driving all this time, what kept me company were podcasts. And I listened to a lot of different podcasts at the time. And one particular podcast was something that really stood out to me during this time period was TED Ed. And the TED Ed podcast and usually did a great job of bringing in incredible speakers and kind of highlighting the moments from their speaks or from their talks. And truly, it's been something that really stood out to me to a point where it's become something that I think I would like to do in my lifetime one day. Almost like a bucket list thing for me. So I'm listening to this TED Talk as I'm driving through the quiet night in Chicago. And the speaker was talking about how you shouldn't be afraid to take a risk and just pursue something that you're not sure would work out for you. And, I was like, okay, I kind of already did that already. I went through that process. I took this big risk and I moved to Chicago, and I've taken on so much debt in this meantime. But the speaker also emphasized you want to make sure you have your North Star. And by North Star, they really are emphasizing knowing what drives you and knowing what is like core to your personality and the person you want to be. And so that's when I started having a bit of a realization and saying, I've known for so long that I want to work with people. I want to interact with people directly. And if I can add to that, if I can find a position or a job that also involves science, as one of my first loves in academic world, then so be it. That would be kind of a win-win. So I decided there and then my time in Chicago was coming to an end. So I moved back to Florida. I got very lucky that it was kind of convenient timing. I ended up moving in with a good friend of mine, Mark, and then eventually moved in also with another good friend of mine, Ryan. And it was cool being back in my old stomping grounds from college, but it was different. I was now a post-grad looking for young alumni, looking for new opportunities. And here's where my sister-in-law comes into play and really shifted everything for me. Wendy, she suggested that for me to find a job, I could look at substitute teaching. And substitute teaching is a pretty, I'm not going to say simple, but easy job to get into because there's always a demand. And you can also pick the hours you want to work and what schools you want to substitute at. So it seemed like a pretty simple layup. I'll be honest, at this time, there was absolutely no interest for me to work as a teacher, but it was kind of a easy enough thing to pay the bills. So I started subbing. I would sub at some high schools, I would sub at some middle schools, and it wasn't bad. Sometimes the classrooms I was covering for, they would leave sub notes for me and I could follow instructions perfectly fine. Other times there were no sub notes and I kind of had to improvise, and that actually wasn't too difficult either for me. And I was like, oh, this isn't too hard. It's just talking to a bunch of preteens in the case of middle school or teenagers in the case of high school. And finally, I got I think it was a text from Eric, Mark's younger brother, he was going to Timber Creek at the time. I want to say he was a senior at this point. And I had got informed that there was going to be a long-term subbing position at Timber Creek. So I said, oh, okay, if you're a long-term sub, you get paid a little more. It's more consistency. And it was for a history position. Now, mind you, I haven't taken a history class since freshman year of college, so 2009. I was a little rusty. But I was so fortunate that I got a chance to work directly with Mr. Tesh. Mr. Tesh, he's still at Timber Creek. I'm hoping to get a chance to interview him soon. He's one of our most beloved teachers, and he's really been a mentor of mine when I started teaching. But he provided me with so much information and really was that person who said, hey, I'm going to help you through all this and make sure that you're not sinking and feeling like you're drowning in a brand new situation. So yeah, here I am with a bunch of freshmen teaching a world history class. I want to say I started in like October and I taught all the way through December. It was like about Egypt, and it was again, world history class, but I think it was about Egypt and the Egyptian time period moving into the Greek time period. And I was having fun. And turns out I had a couple of my administrators, the administrators of the school, when I was subbing, pop in to make sure I was doing a pretty decent job, and they thought I did a good job. And so one day they offered me the position to teach world history. And I thought, wow, that's not a bad idea. It's more stable pay. I don't think I'm terrible at this, but to be totally honest, I wasn't very confident in my ability to teach history. Like I said, it's not my strong point. Thankfully, this is where things really were super fortunate, and the happenstance of this was just ideal. They informed me that there was also a anatomy position opening up. Turns out one of the former anatomy teachers was retiring around that time, and I thought this was like a layup. This was going to be the perfect situation for me. So I'm incredibly fortunate that this anatomy teacher, when she was retiring, she gave me everything. She had planned out the rest of the school year. She let me shadow her for 2 weeks before she left, so I got to really see how she interacted with her students. And when I took over, I was very honest with the students that I had. And I still remember a lot of those kids that very first semester I started teaching in January. I told them, I'm not here to change up everything. I know you guys were familiar with your former teacher. I just want to keep the status quo. But that was such a special moment for me because I didn't have to feel like I had to fly this thing on my own. And I had all the resources that really helped me out. But then that next summer and the next school year truly was my first opportunity to learn who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do from there. So as I conclude this special episode and as we get towards the end here, it's been quite a journey. There's been a number of things that I really want to get a chance to talk about. So this one in particular was all about how I became a teacher in the first place, because it was never my calling. I do truly believe that there are many people out there that can be great teachers, that given the circumstances, if our society put a little more value in education, more people would probably put themselves out there to find that position. And I do believe this wholeheartedly. Anyone who's ever had success has had a teacher that's influenced them for the better. And I can vividly remember the teachers in school that were influential to me. And when I started teaching, that was what I looked at. I knew I had to create my own identity. I had to create my own personality of how I was going to teach. But I relied on my former teachers to guide me. Just thinking, how did I feel when I was a kid in those classes? How do I want to replicate that? So it's been such a great experience. I think in the next solo episode, whenever that time comes, our next big milestone, I kind of want to talk about what I've learned as a teacher. What are the things that I thought I knew? What are the things I had to figure out? Was I always in love with teaching as soon as I started teaching, and just how things went in this decade that I've been experiencing this. So I really want to thank everyone for sticking with me for 10 episodes. It would do me a great honor if you don't mind sharing this with somebody and just sharing the socials and whatever you decide to follow. But I really do enjoy this, and it's been a great opportunity to talk and just learn more from people in my life and see where their lives have taken them today. So for those of you who are sticking in with me, I want to appreciate you one last time for listening in to Catching Up, and I'll catch you next time.